come from is yourself. And if anyone says, here, I have this wonderful recipe book for you to become enlightened, you're the fool. Because they don't have a recipe book where you can become enlightened. What they have, if they're being honest and if they're being integral, is they're saying to people that only you can do it.
Hello guys, Joe here. Really pleased to have Michael Feeley back on. I did an interview with Michael a few months ago and I said it at the time and I'm going to say it again. I think I've re-listened to it about 3 times, and if anybody heads to my channel, I'd send them to your interview because it is my favourite interview. So I've just given Michael a little bit of a breakdown of where I'm at since we last chatted, which of course is the left-hand path, and looking at the Lucifer and the energies that are around us all of the time and that have been vilified by Western traditions. And of course, I'm here for Michael to educate me on this, because I'm pretty sure with the work that Michael's done, he's looked at all of this also and understands it. And also to talk about Michael's new book called The Movement. But I think what triggered this, I mean, we talked about doing another interview last time, but of course, me being me, I stopped doing videos and I go off on tangents doing other things and, you know, get distracted. What triggered my wanting to do an interview this time was your picture of Anubis on Facebook. I was like, oh yeah, because prior to you posting that, I'd had a meditation and Anubis had come in. Now I'll be honest, he looked more like Snoopy in the actual picture that come up. But I knew it was, and you know when you're in, it's a feeling. It's not about what's depicted, it's what you feel. And as soon as I recognised it was Anubis, boom, I was out of the space. It lasted like literally milliseconds, and then I was at the massive door at one of the pyramids. And then again, as soon as I consciously recognised that, I was gone again. And then I think I was in a field of yellow, like rapeseed or something. So, but I was like, and I've been with the path that I'm on right now, and I haven't yet done any ritual because I'm a little bit wary. I'm doing research and making sure that I'm going to be in a safe space when I do finally decide to delve into it. And I've been wondering and and ahhing, who do I work with? And of course, because Anubis came in a meditation, I thought, I wonder if that's like a sign. Because I've been reading a book as well called The Holy Guardian Angel, and he basically says just ask for your Holy Guardian Angel, because of course the conversation that we had last time, and the experience that I've had and that you've had, that, you know, the Holy Guardian Angel is guiding us in some way. So if you've got any notice on that, then absolutely we can delve into that. But yeah, it was actually a picture of Anubis, and I wanted to delve more into Egypt and our ancient ancestry, and is that where we originate from? So yeah, take the floor, because I've had, you know, have the floor.
Egypt, as we know, is an extremely important place. It is far older than the mainstream is given credit for. So I've dated the Great Pyramid at being nearly 74,000 years of age. So we are looking at extremely ancient in terms of knowledge. Now that knowledge base spread across the world because it was the same crux of people that embarked, and wherever they disembarked is where we find all of these earthly monuments, and not only on Earth but and also on other planets of the solar system, because they went there as well. So Egypt is really the pinnacle of esoteric knowledge. Now, when you look at the likes of the Bible, which I also speak a lot about, it is really a division of the Hebrew scriptures. But the Hebrew language comes from Egypt, and it is called sacerdotal jargon. So in other words, it is the complex language, unique language, only understood by the priests. So ancient Hebrew comes from Egypt, which then formulated the Bible. So even the Bible, its origin is Egypt. And I found lots of mathematics in the Great Pyramid that relate to Mary Magdalene and Christ. So the Great Pyramid is really the tomb of Magdalene and Christ. Now, when you start looking at Anubis, the yellow fields that you're in are called the reeds.
Oh,
Which is
wow.
basically the reeds are the afterlife. And
Wow.
of course, it is the Sea of Reeds. Now, the Bible translated that, or changed it, shall I say, to the Red Sea, the Reed Sea. So it's the Sea of Reeds, which is the Egyptian afterlife, which is obviously where, you know, the pharaohs and the initiated and all of those people went after physical death. The significance of Anubis is the word Anubis means twice born. Now, that doesn't mean reincarnation. It means a spiritual rebirth while you're still living.
Wow.
So that's what Anubis signifies, and that's why he's black and gold, because black represents that physical death, and gold represents the spiritual rebirth into wisdom, to enlightenment.
To gold. The Elstree of lead to gold.
So Anubis is twice born. In other words, you have this resurrection where you are living. You have this spiritual rebirth. You reinvent yourself. You have a different focus. Now, he has big ears because the Egyptians also dealt with infrasonic sound, which is the sound that you cannot hear. And the likes of the Ankh was almost like a machine that could actually detect inaudible sounds. So Anubis is really representing a spiritual rebirth. And the Sea of Reeds is the Egyptian afterlife, where, you know, the souls of the departed, the liberated souls, would go. The Reed Sea, the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea. So it's, again, It's all connected to Egypt. Now, when we start looking at, when you mentioned angels and archangels, the universe, reality, ourselves, the earth, everything in existence is an electromagnetic grid. Now, angels are conscious electricity, and that travels at angles and arc angles. So you have angels and archangels. It is conscious electricity. And because everything is in a grid, then they are able to locate you based on where you are in that grid. To give an example, when someone goes missing and you call the police will be able to, if the person has a mobile phone with them that is switched on, the police are able to locate them by what's called triangulation. What they're doing is they're forming a triangle to locate a particular person at a specific point in the grid. So everything is really a grid, and angels and archangels are conscious electricity that travels in angles and arc angles. Duality. Consciousness emerges from the unconscious. Light emerges from dark. The known emerges. The known emerges from the unknown. Now, duality is an effect of the unseen cause. So duality is a perception, it's not real. Now, when you realize that duality is not real, you are then operating from the cause, which is the unseen cause that creates the effect. So duality is really that deception, and when you realize that, it's that when you step out of the hypnosis of object and subject, you realize that nothing is separate from anything else. The only reason
Sorry, is that why they pummel us with all this duality, with, you know, the conflicting, is to make sure, because I wrote an article, duality is the only philosophy, because throughout my journey, I've just come to realize that everything's dual, there's no fact, because with one fact, there's something that will oppose that fact. You know, let's talk science as an example. So is that why there is all this conflicting, is to make sure we remain in a dual state?
Well, we are kind of trapped in this self-established positive negative. Now, when you realize that it is all the same thing, then you've stepped out of duality and you are in non-duality. You are really operating from the unseen cause rather than being trapped in the squabbles of the effect. So this duality is little more than a perception. But when you realize that nothing is separate, that the object and the subject are the same thing, the tree that you are looking at is actually you, and you are the tree. And eventually, as part of the likes of Egyptian initiation, they had what is called spiritual concentration. Now, spiritual concentration is when you stare at an object, and at some point you will become the object. And this happened to me, ironically, in a chapel of rest, when I was visiting the loved one who passed away, and there was just me and the loved one in the chapel of rest. And as I was looking into the coffin to say goodbye, I became aware that I was looking through her eyes, looking at me, looking at her. So this is what the Egyptians called spiritual concentration. It was part of their initial initiations, where you had to overcome the hypnosis of object and subject. Now that brings you into the biblical Christ, the Christ Jesus. Christ being the object is completely in control of Jesus, the subject. What it is telling you is that it is all one thing. There's nothing separate, only the illusion of separation. So then moving on to your left-hand path. Again, we look at certain characters and we give certain references and certain representations to these characters. The Bible is full of characters that never existed, because they are conveying a message and they are being used as a story in order to understand. But people have taken the story as being historical fact, when it's actually the hidden message that is the truth. So when you start looking at what are demons, demons are the invisible inhabitants of the elements that the church branded as demons. What is Lucifer? The bearer of light, the ferrier of light. What is Satan? The law of matter. So anything that is materialistic, you know, I only earned 5 billion this year, so next year we must do better. We must 10 billion. That's Satan, because it's material. It's materialism. So we've given.
I want to touch on Ahriman, if you've heard of Ahriman, because I understand he is the true Lord of matter. What I understand, Satan, from my research that I've done, is that Satan is actually the black flame that we all hold within us, which is the divine light within us. So, but please continue. But yeah, I want to touch on Ahriman.
We all contain all of these things within us. These things, none of these characters, none of these names are outside of us, because they all represent something within us. So regardless of the name of the character, names are something that humans give these representations of something. A lot of the biblical visitations, like the wheel of Ezekiel and different visitations, it is what they have seen in the unseen worlds. But nothing is outside of us. So regardless of the character name, regardless of what they represent, they are representing an aspect of ourselves. It is never outside of you, because there is no external salvation. There is only internal rebirth.
That makes complete sense, because I'm reading a book at the moment about the Kabbalah, the clip-off. Have you heard of the clip-off, the tree of death?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And the Goetia and magic with the Goetia. And the clip-off is basically, and I assume Carl Jung did the clip-off, because he actually came out with the phrase, in order to get to heaven, you have to go through the depths of hell. And he, of course, his red book is about psychosis, and it said that to do the clip off, you could potentially have spiritual psychosis, because you are working with individual demons through the separate spheres, but those demons are your internal fears, your negative emotions, basically, your demons within us. And that's why it can bring out spiritual psychosis, because if you've not done any, well, it's deep shadow work.
It is.
So,
as I work with the shadow of the valley of death, you know, the one of the plagues of Egypt, when the sun darkens, that's talking about the same thing. It's talking about facing your own darkness, facing your own demons. So you went into the abyss in the Great Pyramid, which was basically the pit, the dark pit, where your breath, your thoughts, your heartbeat became your enemy, because that's all you can hear, and because it's so silent and dark, that is all amplified. So you have to face your own demons because you are manifesting them. So it is really, you know, you have to go through your ninth sphere. You have to go through your Klapoth. You have to go through your sphere within a sphere, which is that grotesque statue at the Vatican City. You have to go through your own darkness. You have to go through your own cave, so to speak, to come out the other side.
Yeah.
And when you leave the tomb after 3 days, then you are walking into light. You are walking into the resurrection of self. You're walking into your own rebirth, which is Anubis, through the underworld. And that underworld is your shadow side.
So one then questions, you know, with Anubis coming in my meditation, what does that represent? You know, and the yellow fields, I did not realize that they had any connection to Egypt whatsoever, because why would I? Because I've never looked at Egypt. But what I do want to talk about is you saying that Egypt is 74,000. I also want to talk about the Tree of Life as well, because I've been, you know, looking at that while I'm learning about that, whilst I've been learning obviously about the Tree of Death. But I just want to touch on Egypt being at least 74,000 years old, and how that ties in with the astrology, because obviously astrology is, the cycles of astrology is 26,000 years. So basically, how can I even, from the ancient Egypt to where we are now, and the cycles that we've been through, and I think we might have touched on this in our last chat. We have basically lived this life, and it's absolutely rebirth. Go on. You know what I'm trying to say. Go on.
When you mention cycle, obviously it speaks for itself. It is a cycle. It is a circle. It is, you know, it is this wheel that we're in. Now we are currently in the 17th 360-year cycle of ancient Egyptian astrology. Now that began in our year 2001, which is when it is written in the Great Pyramid the great knowledge would be re-emerged once again. So 2001 was the start of the 17th 360-year cycle, and that is how I've kind of been able to date the Great Pyramid of being nearly 74,000 years old. The number 17 is also significant spiritually, because the entrance of the Great Pyramid is on the 17th course level.
I was born on the 17th.
Yeah. Now, if you add up all the numbers from 1 to 17, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, all the way to 17, it gives you 153. Now, when you walk into the Grand Gallery, it has 153 steps. It is 153 feet long. When you look at Christ, he caught exactly 153 fish with the apostles. When you look at the Greek gematria of Mary Magdalene, it equals 153. So there's a lot of significance in relation to 17, in relation to 153, which then relates to the number 9. So the Great Pyramid is extremely old. Now, when you start talking about the cycle of 26,920 years, that is the precession of the equinox. Now, the precession of the equinox is what they call biblically Judgment Day, because you should have reached, by the time you do that full circle, you should have reached a certain point in your evolution. So it is self-judgment day. You know, so you are there to judge yourself in relation to where you are now compared to where you were at the start of that journey. And that can lead to many, many incarnations, because you're not going to get it the first time.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to do with cycles. It's a lot to do with monitoring your own evolution.
Because I came up with that theory. You know, those of us that are at this point in our journey, we've basically completed, because I've been trying to tie everything in with the Great Reset and obviously going into the Age of Aquarius, and with it is just me ping-ponging thoughts and being creative with what I've learned, because I obviously have not done the research that you've done and the knowledge that you've got. But I theorize that those of us that are awakening, shall we say, we're basically at that end of we've done the 26,000 year cycle, and that's what the Great Reset is all about. It's not about you alone, nothing will be happy. That's, you know, it's about the spiritual evolution, and those of us that aren't getting it basically will be thrust back to the very beginning of the cyclical age to do it all again. Is that poor bastard? Is that
you will potentially keep coming back until you get it. And when you start looking at Aquarius, obviously Aquarius we associate with water, aqua. Now we will begin to remember. Now when you look at the Hebrew word for water, it is mem, and it is that word that gives us the English memory. So it relates to us remembering who we are and remembering these great secrets. Now the Logos, which is really the governing force of the cosmos, appears as memory. And when you look at the skies, it is really the cosmic ocean. So the cosmic ocean will give us memory of who we are and what we are. But until you get it, until you polish the stone, as they put it, until you become that perfected stone, the number 64, you will potentially have to keep coming back until you do. Because we come here with a plan, and sometimes we go to other places with a plan. And there are things, you know, your gut feeling, your intuition, which is a guardian angel, in effect, that is trying to keep. If you imagine a pinball machine, you know, you are that little silver ball bearing in the middle. And throughout life, there are things that are trying to keep you in the middle of the pinball. And that is your inner guardian angel that is trying to keep you on that plan.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you ask the question, and I have done, why did that happen? Why did I have to experience that? And the answer was, we're trying to keep you on your plan. It's that they're trying to keep you where you should be, because, you know, when again, we certainly within the New Age, which is completely misinformed, but certainly within the New Age, they will talk about a veil of amnesia. There's no veil of amnesia if you connect to your spiritual aspect, because that's where that information is stored. It is not stored in an organic brain, because that is for this incarnation. But you can actually connect to your previous encounters. Now, when you connect the past, the present, and the future, that is the continuity of consciousness. Now, consciousness comes from the unconscious, in the same way that the known comes from the unknown, the same way as light comes from dark. So when you connect to your spiritual aspects, and you have that memory of who you were, who you are now, and what you're aiming for, you are connecting all three in the same place, which is the continuity of consciousness. So we are all striving to be the most evolved aspect of this individual experience as we can be.
So just on that, from the Gnostics perspective, and again, I've theorized this based on the little bits of information that I've picked up through reading little bits of books and just picking things up. And I do want to go back to the Tree of Life at some point. But so obviously with Egypt, you have like the Red Sea, the Reed. Was it called the Reed Sea? The yellow field.
The Red Sea. The Sea of Reeds with the afterlife.
The Sea of Reeds. With what I've picked up, or what I've think that what I've concluded is that the moon is where the souls go in order to be judged as to whether or not, and whilst it's in my memory because you're writing things down, I want to talk about Dante's Inferno as well and the 7 realms of hell, but I'll try and get, there's just so much that I'm just, you know, picking up on it, and I'm like, oh, I need to spit it all out. The moon is where we go to. So how I depict the tree of life. The tree of life is Jacob's ladder. And in order for us to get to Kether, we have to go through the various planets, which are the archons. And again, I'm turning to Gnostic text here. So please, you know, correct me if that isn't what the Egyptians. So in order to get to Kether, we have to go through the various planets, work with the emanations of the tree of life, which of course depict various elements of our ego. And again, you know, I'm getting conflicted messages coming in now about the tree of death, but that's a separate thing. We can talk about that separately. And then, so the planets of the archons, the first one is the moon, and Lilith governs the moon. And do souls go to the moon, and then we are judged as to whether or not we then ascend to another planet? Because of course, again, we touched on this in our last chat, the cube and Saturn and what Saturn represents. And Saturn being the last planet that we have to go to. I can't remember what Saturn is on the, is it Guther on the tree of life? I can't remember. Before we get to the triad, which is the higher, which one could call the abyss, which actually Lucifer does actually hold the key to get into the abyss, which is dark, death, which is the sphere of knowledge, but it's not actually on the tree of life, it's hidden. Again, that's the snippet that I've picked up, and I could be wrong. But we have to ascend through the planets, but we have to go to the moon to be judged as to whether or not we're going to come back into this realm or ascend further. Give me your insight and your opinion on what you think of that. I mean, we've got to go to the light. So
okay, the moon is not a planet. The moon is not a satellite. The moon is a, should we say, a way station. It is an observation post. It was made to look like a planet. Now, there is an advanced soul pool on the moon. Now, advanced human souls from Earth are allowed access to that advanced soul pool. But the violent, should we say, prehistoric, undeveloped soul from Earth is rejected before he gets anywhere near. Now, when it's rejected...
Say that one again so I can process it.
So if the soul is undeveloped, if it still has animalistic, violent tendencies, it will be rejected in the first heaven, which is the moon. Okay, so that is the moon. Now, when we start talking about the tree of life, we are talking again about the body, and we're also talking about the 10 Commandments, because we have the 5 energies that leave, we have the 5 energies that enter. Now, if you wish to balance and unify the outgoing and the incoming energies, which are represented by the left hand and the right hand, left hand, right hand path, then if you wish to unify those influx and outflux, you join the hands. When you join your hands, that becomes the tree of life.
Ah, yes.
Wow. You have the earth, which are your little fingers, and your thumbs will always be ether. So you are making the transition from earth to ether. Or if you come from spirit to matter, you are coming from ether down to earth. Yeah. But that is the tree of life, which is connecting the hands. So the tree of life represents the body. Now, it's a deep subject that would take a long time to explain, but nevertheless, the planets rule each hour of the day. Now, we have 12 hours of the day and we have 12 hours of the night. Now, the planets will swap over every hour. This is the 24 elders of the Bible. Around the throne, which again is talking about you. when we start talking about the ascension through the planets obviously, the zodiac and the planets have influence on each aspect of the body. You know, you have Aries, the lamb, which is the top of the head. You have Taurus, which is the neck. You have Pisces, which is the fish, the feet. You have Leo, which is the heart. We are making the ascension also through the chakras, which again is Dante's Inferno. Now we have the three bottom chakras, which is the well of sorrows, but they are balanced by the three top chakras, in the same way that the higher dimensions are balanced by the lower, and vice versa. So you have the well of sorrows of the three lower chakras, Sodom and Gomorrah, Dante's Inferno, and you have the top three chakras which balance the bottom three. Now those six are balanced at the center, which is your heart. So when you look at an Egyptian mummy and they're doing this, where their arms cross is over the heart, which is the center of balance. When you see the shepherd's crook, it is demonstrating your third eye getting as close to your heart temple as you can, and that is represented by the shepherd's crook,
Right.
or
Wow.
the serpent crozier, because the third eye is connecting to the secret temple of the heart, which is the balance of your chakras, which is your seven civilizations of Asia, your you know, everything that relates to the seven, the seven lampstands, the minaret, it's related to your chakras. And when you get to the crown chakra, which is the sarcophagus of the king's chamber, then that is violet or purple. Now, in Greek, the word for purple is the same word for phoenix. So that is the phoenix from the flame, the crown chakra. So
I love talking to you, Michael.
your violet, your purple, connects to the ultraviolet, the invisible light of the cosmos. So that is your phoenix from the flame. It is the violent flame of transmutation. Now, when you get to Golgotha, which is the skull, you are really at the summit, represented by the mountain. You are at the summit of the mortal state. And from that point, you are then connecting to the cosmic forces. So all of these things that you've mentioned in relation to Dante's Inferno, in relation to the chakras, in relation to the planets, in relation to the tree of life, is different aspects of the body. And in order to become the spiritual man, or the perfect spiritual man, Christ, the Christified being, the Osarified being, you have to sacrifice your physical self. You have to carry the body, which is Simon carrying the cross of Christ. You have to carry your body because you are in a mortal experience. But you have to crucify that body in order to transition. Now, when you start talking about risen from the dead, it is talking about reactivating the brain centers. So it's
activate. Not physical death. It's not an actual physical death.
No. It's a ritualistic physical death. Because even Saint Philip says, you know, those who think you have to die first to be resurrected are in error. There is no death and resurrection. You are resurrected while you're living, because that is your second birth. That is your spiritual rebirth, your phoenix from the flame. So you are risen from the tomb after 3 days, which means that your brain centers, which were inactive, have become activated. So you are risen from the dead. Dead is really another word in mystical terms for ignorance, blindness, the unknown. So you are resurrecting yourself, and you are becoming the Christ-and being, or in Egypt, Osarified, because Christ and Osiris are the same thing. It's the process of illumination. So that is what it is. Now, the people who had gone through that process, the so-called death and rebirth, used to mark that with a crucifix. Today, everybody wears them. But in the day, in the ancient times, only those who had become christened wore crucifixes.
I just want to touch on that because I was briefly chatting to a friend today, and we got onto, because, and again, I want to touch on this with you, Christ being Lucifer and Lucifer being Christ, one of the same thing. I want to touch on that with you. But I was saying about, I wonder if that's why Jesus was put on the cross, because you've got the left and the right and then the balance. So is that what that's depicting?
There's so many. With every question, there are 70 answers.
Yes, I know. So, I
know. There are multiple interpretations of what the cross mean. You know, some say that originally it meant nature, the plant, the animal, and man. The cross really, in essence, is the human body. Now, when you see Christ on the cross, it is representing the crucifixion of your physical nature in order to become spiritual man, in order to become the resurrected self. So Christ on the cross is the person who has rebirthed himself, who has become spiritual man. And Christ is an example, a literal example of what that would look like. So Lucifer, of course, also relates to light, and Lucifer relates to Venus. So that is why Christ and Lucifer are the morning star, because Venus again has its own representations. We have the symbol of Venus, which is the shell. You know, you'll see the Shell Garage logo. You'll see the Venus being born on a shell on the paintings. The shell is an empty vessel. Now, empty vessels, the body, are incarnated by higher forces of light, the soul. So when the soul comes down, it incarnates the empty shell. That is the significance of the empty shell and the body. That's why the Pope wears shells on his robe, and that's why you have the symbol of Venus on a shell. So Venus itself is kind of a higher octave than Saturn. So Lucifer is light. Jesus is light. And that is why the two have been mixed up in terms of what they represent, because they both represent an illumination. But the cross is the body that you have to carry throughout your life. And you have to sacrifice that materialism, Satan, in order to become the Christ. But materialism will try and tempt you. And that is why Satan attempts to tempt Christ. Because there are forces that will try and take you away from your spiritual purpose, your spiritual path. And that is Satan, materialism.
So again, this is something that I've been mulling over the last few days as it happens, why the left-hand path has been vilified the way that it's been vilified. And it's because they're trying to push everyone to fear Satan, because if we fear Satan, we're simply not going to look at our demons, basically. And that's why the right hand path has been pushed so heavily with, you know, sit and do nothing and meditate and and all the rest of it, because we're not looking at the darker aspects of who we are, so therefore we're then not becoming whole. So Christianity is pushing. They're pushing Christianity and vilifying the demons for that purpose, that we don't have the dark night of the soul, for want of a better phrase, or you know. But one of my things with looking at the left-hand path is, because I know the middle path is called the royal path as regards to the tree of life, which is the hardest path to walk. So when you're looking at each path, the left and the right, I start to question, well, okay, the left-hand path seems to be getting quite popular. Why is that? And is it because they want everybody heavy left or right? Again, I started to become conflicted, because I'm understanding the reason for having to look at your darker self, do your shadow work in order to become the light. But if people are remaining on the left-hand path, then what's that representing? Because of course you've got churches of Lucifer. One comment from a guy in a conversation I was having was you have to choose one or the other, the right or the left. So
That's wrong.
Right, okay, so please explain, because this is where I start to really conflicted with my journey.
Many people in all forms of life will always mention the word God, which again, it's a man-made word. If you look at ancient Hebrew, which comes from, as I said, Egypt, the word God in Hebrew is Gimel Dalet, G-D, which means light and dark. So God is both light and dark. The word God means balance, it means equilibrium in ancient languages. So you will only ever find God if you have that inner balance. That is God within.
So just explain to me what in a balance is, because I say to my friend, right, sometimes I'm just like, I'm on a level with my emotions, and she goes, does that not mean it's balance? I'm like, well, if that's balance, and it's boring because there's no up and there's no down. So
no,
continue with what you were saying, because I have to interrupt Michael, otherwise I forget what I wanted to say. I'd like you to elaborate on what being balanced actually means.
Balance is just what you've experienced. Balance is emotionless reaction.
Okay.
So when you're having constant ups and downs, it's tiring. You are having negatives, you're having positives, you're having negatives, you're having positives. So the ideal condition for equilibrium is an emotionless reaction, which is that. So when you look at the higher levels of initiation, that's what they're aiming for. In the same way that they're aiming to not need books because they wish to experience the answer rather than have to read the answer.
Yeah.
So going back to the word God, the word God actually means balance. So people go to church to find God. People go to Freemasonic temples to find God. But those places, whether it's a synagogue, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a church, have created a system of imbalance. So by virtue of that imbalance, they will never find God in those buildings. Because when any system oppresses the female over the male, you are creating imbalance. And if you create imbalance, that's not God, because God is balance. So you will never find God in these buildings because they've created a place where you can never find God, which is imbalance. When there are so many people that are within so-called truth movements, within so-called position of influence, shall we say, that are talking absolute nonsense. And that is concerning because people are listening to that nonsense and they're believing it. Now, when people come on YouTube or Twitter or whatever they want to do and start proclaiming to be the Messiah and to be all-knowing and talk absolute bunkum, telling people that they must choose, then they themselves are creating imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
They will never get to where they are supposedly intended on going because they're completely misinformed, and they are now they've been duped by the same people who duped everybody else.
And this is where I was conflicting with
when I did a talk many years ago at a New Age event, someone a lady at the end of it said to me, "Why are you bringing darkness into this place?" And I said, "What do you mean by that?" She says, "We are of the light. We don't have darkness in this place." And I said, "Okay, do you believe the Bible?" And she says, "Yes." I said, "What do you think it meant when your Bible says that on the fourth day God created light?" So if God created light on the fourth day, he must have been in a place of darkness because light comes from dark. So why are you telling me to avoid the very place where God is?
Yeah.
He went, because I have no answer to the truth.
Yeah.
What you have to do is not oppress, subdue any aspect of self. You have to unify it. You have to merge it. And that brings balance. I said earlier about duality being a perception. It is, but it is also a means for us to work it out that it's a perception. It is a means for us to work out how far we are progressing because we have a comparable. So our mind in this experience of the third dimension, we use this illusion of duality to measure our progress. But when you realize that it is a perception, then that perception takes you to a place of silence. Silence is not the absence of noise. Silence is the presence of awareness. And when you have the awareness that it is a perception, then you step outside of the illusion.
See, because I said to my friend when I was talking about this leveling of emotions, I said, if this is what it feels like to be balanced, I actually feel dead. But I think it's because they have us up and down all the time. And, you know, to feel that, like, peace and
silence.
Like I said, yeah, I said it's boring because I've been doing a lot. I've been in a very contemplative state over these last few weeks. You know, just I'm watching less and less YouTube videos. I'm on Facebook less and less. I'm just throwing myself away from it. Spending more time outside, which of course actually is, as you know, is very healthy. Of course, I'm on the journey that I'm on regarding the left-hand path, but that's because I think I've been drawn to that is because I've vehemently am against the right-hand path because of all the love and light nonsense that's been being pushed by the right-hand path. But me being me, I've gone, well, hang on a minute. If they're pushing that, they're now pushing the left-hand path. They're putting people in boxes yet again. So I've started this journey of the left-hand path, and I'm like, I actually don't even. I don't know. I'm not sure now.
You'll come to realise that every road has two lanes. You'll come to realise that the left and the right-hand path are the same road.
Yes.
And when you look, as I say, when I said about consciousness comes from unconscious, you have this universal mind because God hasn't been created yet. So you have the universal mind called the mental singularity, which exists in the darkness of the dreamless sleep. So we have the darkness of the dreamless sleep, which is just nothing. If you go to bed tonight and you don't dream, it's just black. There's nothing. So in order for the unconscious to create and dream, it had to create consciousness. Now, the moment that it created consciousness can only think of things. And by things, I mean anything that is detectable to the five senses. So you have the unconscious that created consciousness in order to be able to think. Now, that then gives rise to the five sense experience that we are existing in. The only way that the unconscious, the darkness, the sleepless can understand these things is by creating them. And it could only create these things by becoming conscious. So we are in the image of that creation. We are consciousness. We are things. So that was nothing, and we are something, some things, because we are.
I sent a text message to someone today about we are everything all at once and nothing at all at the same time.
We are, because that's where we come from. You know, the knowing comes from the unknown. The light comes from darkness. The manifest comes from the unmanifest. The dream comes from the dreamless. So everything. When you see a candle and you see a flame and you feel the heat from the flame, neither the flame or the heat comes from the candle, it comes from an invisible essence. That invisible essence is the cause, and we're experiencing the effect, which is duality. When you realise that we're actually the cause, then you realise that duality is a perception. Then you become in sync with the mind of the universe.
So if Jesus, Lucifer, and Satan are the three main energies of our being, why is there all these other energies that rule certain planets, and and then you've got your Egyptian gods, and
what's to say that they are separate? What says they are separate is the human mind attributing some kind of identity to them.
Yeah.
If I say to you Yahweh, and I say to you Jesus, straight away you see two individual identities.
What are they saying?
But the word Yahweh, originally YHWH, simply means to inhale and exhale. The word Jesus means divine breath. So you will see now that it is two names for the same thing. So all of this, different planets, different energies, different this, is a human construction. It all comes from one essence, and it separates. If you imagine that when you look at these great oceans, you are looking at water molecules. All of those water molecules are individual molecules, but they're still part of the same ocean. Now, you may call one Fred, you may call one Betty, but they're still part of the same ocean.
Yeah.
It is the human mind that has to attribute names. If you speak to these conscious electrical energies and you say, what is your name? They will say, I don't have a name. But humans give them a name so we can identify individuals.
Yeah.
It is all part of the same ocean. So
Well,
it's our belief.
Did they not have like, you know, like you've got and I'm concentrating more on the demons because, again, from what I've learned, the demons will help you evolve in life, where the angels are for giving you knowledge. That, again, you can, you know, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I've picked up. So you've got different demons, because I got into demonology by looking at Enochian magic, but that system's just way too complex for me to even start to contemplate. But so you've got a demon for love, and you've got a demon for money, and you've got a demon for self-development. So they're obviously harboring different energies in order to help you with different aspects of your life. But of course, in order to get the different aspects, so let's say you're struggling with, I don't know, let's say you're struggling with money, right? So you can do a ritual with a demon to help you with money, but that won't be prolonged because you've got an inner demon within you, which is the reason why you struggle with money in the first place. So you've got to work with the clip-off in order to get rid of that demon, that fear around money, one could say. So if they're all, again, you know, if they're all one, but they're all different energies, just like you and I are, we're all one, but we are an individual energy. So if you've understood my question, because as you know, I go around the houses, it's just the way my brain works. I can't help it. Yeah.
The demons that we face are internal demons projected.
Yeah.
So everything that we face, we're facing ourselves. Because if you imagine, we are the projector, and reality is the screen. Whatever images are projected from the projector is what you see on the screen. So the demons that we are facing are the ones that we've projected. In terms of the stars and the zodiac either controls you or you control it. So in other words, if you have a greater understanding, you can use these tools of the toolbox to your advantage. If I go, it's the same as now, you know, me and Mr. Universe have the exact same muscle base. Every muscle that he has, I have. But in him, it may be more defined. Why? Because he used something called resistance. Now, that resistance in that case are the weights of the gym. So we can all use resistance in order to enhance ourselves. In the same way that the unconscious created consciousness to better itself, to expand itself, so that it could think of things, it could experience the things that it could never possibly experience otherwise. So if you understand the game, you can play it to your advantage. If I went and sat down and played chess with Kasparov, I wouldn't stand a chance because I don't understand the game. He does. So when you understand the game, you can better play it. So when you understand how reality works, how existence works, how the universe works, you can use the component parts to your advantage. And instead of having things control you, you can control them. There are, of course, in the interests of comparables, there are individual experiences out there that have what we would deem to be a positive outlook. There are them that would have a negative outlook. The ones with a negative outlook all want something in return. So when people say, you know, you've sold your soul, well then literally you've made some kind of contract with one of these negative entities. Now the consequence of doing that is when you pass from the physical world, you've now sold your soul to them. So for the people who have sold their soul, there is nothing beyond the grave other than servitude. So it's important. It's important to be extremely sure of what you're doing before you do it. And when you start looking at the likes of magic, you know, magic is really imposing your will and creating things from the unmanifest world to manifest it into this world. So you are, and that's why they created sacred geometric shapes like the circle, for instance, the magic circle, because within that circle you are controlling that entity, and that is why they are evoking them into certain geometric shapes. You're almost imprisoning them in a prism, really. But you have to be very, very careful with what you're doing, because ultimately it all leads to the same place. But one road is rocky, one road is smooth, and it is for you to decide which road you want to take. But be extremely careful when you do start looking into forces that we don't understand. It's best that you understand before you start dealing with them.
Absolutely, and that's why I haven't done anything yet, because I don't understand them enough. I mean, I think we might have touched on this in our last discussion. You know, we've both experienced paranormal experiences. You know, my friend will say, well, why do you want to work with these forces? And for me, it's to understand whatever's been communicating with me. It's about an understanding for me. It's not because I necessarily want to manifest more money, or I want, because I'm not sure I'm comfortable. It's like this subjugation book that I read last night. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with actually manipulating somebody else's will, you know, because let's face it, that's what the elite do. They manipulate, and it's not something that I'm comfortable with. But I do have an interest in it, in that we are actually able to work with that kind of power. It does interest me. Do I want to use it for my own gain? I don't think I do. I don't think I'm that type of person. I like the idea of it, but what would be the consequence of that? Because there is always cause and effect. Exactly. So I think this is why, but because of the paranormal experiences I've had, this is what's led me here, you know, like things, you know, the air freshener experience that just came from the bathroom and landed on a cushion that I've been sat on, you know, and other things. And I've actually got a picture of the demon that showed himself. So I know that these things exist, and I know that something is protecting me, because I've never felt any negativity when these things have happened. So I know that so for me, it's, who is that? You know, that's why but like I say, I do have the trepidation and the fear of going into those realms, because I understand the circle. I understand, well, I don't understand, but I'm aware of the lesser banishing, I can't remember, ritual of the pentagram or something like that, where you basically keep the bad energies out, because I'm aware that there are negative, evil energies in those spheres. I mean, Michael, I did a Ouija board years and years ago, before I knew what I know now, and I can't say I've had any negative repercussions of doing that. But again, it's something that's been misunderstood.
it's all been misunderstood. You know the paranormal is normal. You know, it's everyday existence. You know, the original meaning of fear is to understand. So when you understand and when you know, there is nothing to fear. However, you know, there are forces out there that we don't understand. There's so many times that I've heard within New Age circles, "Oh, we're going to Glastonbury the weekend to clear the land." Okay, do you know what you're doing? Because Glastonbury is now one of the darkest places there is, because you have dimwits going to Glastonbury, opening portals and not closing them, and they don't even know that they're opening portals. You know, would you leave your house? Would you leave your flat and leave the door wide open? Because that's what these people are doing at the likes of Glastonbury. Don't do anything unless you understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because the forces that you're dealing with understand too well what they're doing, and they understand our reality and how to insert themselves between the different dimensions. And if they want an opportunity to get here, they will. A lot of these so-called demons and negative energies that we are facing are the ones that humanity have created. So we are literally in the streets, or the spiritual streets, and we're not cleaning them.
Yeah.
So instead of going to Glastonbury with your little dowsing stick and say, "I'm going to do this, that, and the other," understand what it is that you're doing, because you're actually having the reverse effect. and again, that comes from the arrogance and the ego of humanity generally. That I have a certificate that says I'm a Reiki master. Well, no, you're not, and neither were they who gave the certificate. Because unless you've been initiated into the mysteries, unless you understand the mysteries, you're not a master of anything. So let's not fool ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. We're not masters of anything, but we are learning, and we have to understand what we're doing. If somebody rang me up there and said, come to Birmingham Airport or Manchester Airport, we want you to fly a jumbo jet, I would say, no thanks, I need to go through pilot training first. I wouldn't just jump in the cockpit and try and take off. That is logic. That is sensible. That is responsible.
Yeah.
So why go to these places not knowing what you're doing and completely opening up everything to whoever wants to come through?
And again, this is the hoodwinking that's been going on. And again, this has been my trepidation with the videos that I'm watching regarding the left-hand path. Are they trying to get people doing all of this in order to open up forces that we simply don't understand? And lots of people go into these things and they're doing these rituals. Like I'm in various groups on Facebook, and they're all showing these, their ritual altars. And yes, I've set myself up a little altar, but I light a couple of candles and a joss stick, and that's about, well, I'm doing my tarot, and that's about as far as I've got. Because, like you say, we don't know what we're dealing with, and they are far more powerful than what we are, and they are able to come into our realm more than we are able to go into their realm. So
all I would say really is, don't sail on the same ship of fools.
Yeah.
Because they are fools, and unless they understand what they're dealing with, they shouldn't be doing it. I don't know, to what extent, to what knowledge base they have. That they may well have sussed it out. They may well have complete control over it. But if they haven't, then they're fools.
I think like there's one guy, and I do resonate with a lot of what he says from an educational point of view, but he's studied the tree of life and he's studied the tree of death. He's only a young lad, and he's started a Patreon. He's getting all these people joining. He's got a Lucifer course and blah blah blah, and and of course people are joining and handing over their money. And I was saying to a friend, I won't hand over any money unless I'm absolutely 100% sure I can trust who I'm working with.
But a Lucifer course, what's that?
To work with the energy of Lucifer, yeah.
But who gave him permission to work with the energy of Lucifer? Who was giving mastery over the energy of Lucifer to then start trying to bottle it and selling it as wine? The biggest ego, the biggest demon that humanity has is its own ego.
Yeah.
And if you overcome your own ego, thinking that you are something that you're not yet, then you have defeated the biggest demon. You know, for me now, I could go out and say, I'm going to do a six-month course on the energy of Jesus. I'm just deceiving people because everybody has the energy of Jesus. It's your own inner enlightenment.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So again, it's this. When I spent a little time in the New Age, I kind of had to understand what it was all about. What I expected when I went there is an arena of spiritual people. What I found, it was an arena of business people pretending to be spiritual because they saw a business opportunity in selling spiritual things.
The Cacao movement.
Exactly.
Someone's making a fortune with the Cacao movement. Yeah.
Of course, and that's what it's all about. You know, you have, I'm a business person, I'll masquerade as being spiritual, and then I can have a good business selling people. You know,
and they're working with Satan. That's what they don't even get.
They are. Ironically, that is satanic consciousness. It's like me now getting a little bottle, going filling it with tap water and selling it as holy water, and people will believe it. So again, you know, as Mark Twain says, religion was created when the first con man met the first fool.
Yeah.
And it's no different in the New Age. It's no different in the truth movements. It's no different in Lucifer courses. When the first con man meets the first fool, that's when their business takes off.
I'm so glad that I've been able to have this conversation with you because it's kind of solidified what I knew internally and why I haven't jumped in and done it yet. But my need and wanting to progress further, if you like, because that's what's being sold at, you know, the spiritual enlightenment to progress further. But hey, I've had Anubis come to me in a meditation, and the reads and sees that I don't need to progress with it. No, I'm kidding. But do you know what I mean? We always want.
It's important for everyone who's listening and watching this to realise that no one can sell to you what you already have.
Yeah.
All the things that you need for a so-called spiritual path, which again is a man-made word, but a so-called spiritual path, your journey, your will, your intent, no one can sell that to you. The only place that it can come from is yourself. And if anyone says, here, I have this wonderful recipe book for you to become enlightened, you're the fool, because they don't have a recipe book where you can become enlightened. What they have, if they're being honest and if they're being integral, is they're saying to people that only you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if they're saying that, it may seem counterproductive, but I write books to teach people that they don't need books. But at that moment in time, they need to be taught that they don't need books, because the idea really is to experience the answers. And when you experience the answers, you don't need somebody else's opinions in written form. But people have to get to that stage. The same way as if I do a spiritual coaching, you know, I say to them, this is going to be a time where I tell you that only you can do it. I've spoken to so-called Reiki masters and I've said to them, if you're a master, why is it that your client needs to come back every week?
Mm-hmm.
If you were a master, they wouldn't need to. But the one ingredient that they're not realizing, neither party is realizing, that the healer only amplifies their client's intent to heal themselves.
Yes.
And if that client comes to them with that intent, the healer will amplify that intent. But if that intent is not there, then it'll be like rain off a windshield. And that is why they have to keep coming back. Because they're saying, sort my life out. Nobody else can do that for you. They can guide you, they can help you, they can say, well, if you do this, it may help. If you get 20 friends and I get 20 friends and I say, let's meet in London tomorrow and we'll run the London Marathon. So there's 40 of us running the London Marathon. And your friends can be clapping and giving you support. But there's only one person that will get you over the line, and that's you. Yeah.
And it's interesting because and the reason why I bought some tarot cards is because I'd started this magic course, and she, you know, she recommended buying some tarot cards. But I've always said, like, tarot, astrology, they're only tools. We are actually, that's why we get the answers that are very, when you do the tarot, we get answers which are very applicable to where we are at on an energetic level, because it's our energy which are actually
yes,
pulling the cards that, you know what I'm trying to say. So it does, and it's interesting. Going back to the astrology, and the astrology being a tool, I always start to read books, but I very rarely finish them. It's called The Magus by Francis Barrett, and he actually was talking about astrology, and he said astrology either rules the man or you rule astrology. But just talking about the magic, so of course you've got all the old alchemists who were doing this, and of course more recent you've got like John Dee and Francis Bacon, who were actually communicating with angels. So if it's all within us, why have we got these ancient alchemists, these old alchemists who were doing that? Because that, from my personal point of view, that's why the likes of little on me here looks at these, like you could say Hermes Trismegistus and all these ancient alchemists, you know, who are truly enlightened, and they've used magic and alchemy to get there. And then you got little on me coming, well, I want to be like him, so I want to start doing magic in order to get like him. So why were they doing it if it's not if it's not recommended because we don't know what we're dealing with? Is because they did know what they were dealing with?
The ancient alchemists were transmuting themselves, and what they were doing is they were activating the inner processes within them. You know, they were going from lead, which is Saturn, and they were going to the philosopher's stone, which is the sun. But what people don't realize, it is not the solar sun, it is the microcosmic sun, which is your own illumination, your own Christ. So they were illuminating themselves and going through the process of fermentation, which is why the vine and grapes are so significant, because the vineyard outside of the city is the auric field of the body. You know, the grape itself, wine, goes through a transmutation, goes through fermentation, and it's really transmuting themselves. The ancient priests were called magi, and magi, of course, gives us the word magic.
Yeah.
Because they understood the processes. When you look at magic, you are evoking hidden forces into the manifest world. You are controlling it, but you are using the tools for your own means. You are controlling those tools.
Yeah.
You know, any tool that is not used properly becomes dangerous. So they did understand these things. Now, when you look at the likes of John Dee, he had a code name, and John Dee's code name was 007. You may well recognise that somewhere else. Yeah. And the Queen, her code name was M. So you have 007 and M. Now, where have I heard that before in recent times in Hollywood? All of these things are to be used. You know, we are trying to get ourselves to become Christ-and, and that is the microcosmic sun, which is called the Conqueror. Now, the Conqueror relates to the number 1000, which is, you know, the 1,000-year rule of God before Satan comes back. It is talking about the Conqueror. When you look at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, it's talking about the 4 divisions of the body. When you look at the 4 living creatures of Revelation, it is talking about the same 4 somatic divisions of the body. Soma means body. So there has never anything been written that has been outside of self. We have misunderstood it, so we are giving it an external understanding. But it's never been an external thing. It's always been things that are happening inside us. So every mystical book, every religious book at its origin, every monument, every monolith relates to the same thing: how you become a Christified being.
So do you think, and this is what I think, things like, obviously we know the New Age movement, and now obviously the left-hand path, which is where I'm heading, or, you know, I'm getting reverb. I'm going to stick these in now because I've just started to get reverb, which is a bit strange. Let's see if this makes a difference. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I don't know how this is going to sound actually. If we're going to, but anyway, so all these movements. So going back to the ancient alchemists who knew what they were doing, what I believe to be happening right now is they're bringing people in to all these different movements, like the right hand path, the left hand path is a form of trickery, if you like. So you've got the truth movement, you've got the BBC movement, I'm going to call it that for one of a better phrase. You got the left hand path, you got the right hand path. It's all to basically get everybody under the same umbrella, but without really knowing what's going on at all. It's like there was something going around about, I don't know if you saw it again in the truth, about Prince Charles, or King Charles he is now, isn't he? And this painting that was unveiled, and of course the truth community comes out, and it's been mirrored 4 ways, and within this image is Baphomet. And I'm like, you know, they're just, it's nonsense. It's something like straight out of Tavistock. Again, it's using ancient deities for negative forces, and then everybody's giving that negative force energy, like you say with the Glastonbury. So people think that they're trying to wake people up, or they're going to Glastonbury to cleanse, and they're actually just bringing in more and more negative force. Do you have any understanding of Ahriman? Is that what Ahriman is? Because Rudolf Steiner talked about Ahriman, and he's lower than Lucifer and Christ. He is, you know, the technical, the matter, the technology rather, the matter. Is that the energy that's creating all of this?
You see, what is happening? It's always been the case, hasn't it? If you can segregate people into different groups, and they think that they've all got the truth.
Yeah.
How I like it as an analogy. It is a big hotel, and that hotel has many rooms, and you have the different groups, the different organisations in one room, and they've closed the door. Next door you have, you know, the ufology, but they've closed the door. Then you have the religion, they've closed the door. Then you have the new age, they've closed the door. So you have this hotel, and it's occupied by many different groups, but they're all isolated within their own sphere of influence, which is their own individual room. Now, within that room, they all think they have the truth, they have it all sussed. But if they were to all open their doors and look at the commonality that runs through all of them, then there would be unity instead of separation.
Yes.
The mistake that they're making, you know, you mentioned Baphomet. If I go to a truth group, and I have done, and I show them a picture of Baphomet, or I show them 666, they will all say, oh, it's the devil. No, it isn't. It's nothing to do with the devil. Baphomet relates to the father of the temple, which is the knowledge of the hippocampus, and 666 is the follower of light. It's nothing to do with the devil, but because you have people who are within truth groups who think they know something different to the general population, they have it completely wrong. And as I said, they've been just as duped as everybody else. So Baphomet is nothing to do with the devil. 666 is nothing to do with the devil or Satan or anything else. They have it wrong. But they've run with it. And many people who join their group, who enter their hotel room, have it wrong as well, because they've listened to people who have it wrong. So if you have generation after generation after generation of false knowledge, then eventually it is agreed upon as being true history, which is the problem we have. All of these things relate to the same thing. You need, as an individual, to spiritually evolve. And when you spiritually evolve, you then connect to what you would deem higher places. Bear in mind that the lower places have to exist in order for the higher places to exist. They are mirrors of each other. But in order to connect to these higher places, there are certain things that you need to condition yourself for. That's called initiation. And when you are conditioned, when you are initiated, down the River Nile, there were temples dedicated to each of your chakras. And you couldn't move on to the next temple until you'd worked out that particular temple, that particular chakra. And
Yeah.
all of the animal gods of the likes of Egypt are the personalities of the chakras. So there you go. There's a secret meaning of why you have, a crocodile-headed god and different things in Egypt. It's the personality of the chakras. So when you understand that the only thing that is really important, and that doesn't include whether the Earth's a flat or if it's a sphere, the only thing that is important is you need to evolve.
Yeah.
So with the tools that you have available, when you activate them, you can get yourself to the finish line. That is the only thing that matters. Now, all of these little nonsense arguments on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and all of this rubbish that's going on is diverting you away from where you should be.
Absolutely.
I belong to nothing.
Yeah.
I don't belong to any particular group. They have no control over me. I have no control over them. I see through them for what they are, which is nonsense.
Which is where I'm at.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I've been going for definite. Go on, sorry.
I am focused and I am concentrating on where I've decided that I want to go.
Yeah.
And everything else is not relevant. I don't feed or I don't get nourishment from the food of opinion.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me what people think, what people believe. It is not selfish, but I am not interested. People invite me to their conferences as a guest. And I say, thank you, but no. And they'll say, why? And I say, because it's superfluous to me. When I do go to the events, because I'm speaking at them, I don't go into the room when there's other speakers. And the hosts have said, why not? I said, because it's superfluous to me. Why do I need to listen to somebody else's opinion of what I've personally experienced? I don't.
Yeah.
So
what's your view then? Because I know you've done interviews with David Icke. Is this too controversial? Because of course David Icke is very one could say he's the god of the truth community. He pushes. I mean, I stopped listening to David Icke a few years ago because I felt he was pushing a lot of fear. Now. Again, and I know he's very much into the esoteric and understands the esoteric, but within that, he does push a lot of fear. What is your? Am I allowed to say this?
Because I bump into David Icke quite a lot because I do work with Ickonic, and he's often at the studio at the same time as me. But in terms of, do I agree with everything he says? No. Do I need to? No. Does that have any relevance to anything? No. David's on his path, I'm on my path, and sometimes that path crosses.
Yeah.
In terms of, again, if you look at the word fear, it means understanding, as I've said. So is he pushing fear or is he pushing understanding? Because you have to realise that, and this has been mentioned in different guises throughout history, there is this negative force that is trying to prevent humanity from succeeding.
Yeah.
Now, you can have multiple opinions as to what that force is, but the commonality is that there is a negative force. And you can name it what you want, you can give it what name you want, but there is a negative force that is stopping humanity from achieving its aim.
And I'm going to ask why, but...
Because why does someone take it upon themselves to become the school play yard bully? Why? Because they're control freaks.
Yeah.
And no king is of any use without a kingdom. No bully is of any use without a victim. And no control freak system is any use without something to control. So that is why. Now, a lot of this force is not necessarily all from Earth. It is operating from the unseen places.
That was my next question.
Which are really using certain figures in certain prominent positions in order to facilitate the unseen world's agenda. And again, we can debate who that may be, but some of it is not from this world. Now, when people turn around and say, well, why would people who live on this planet wish to destroy it? Well, when you say that the people who wish to destroy it are not from this planet, it makes no difference to them, does it? It just doesn't. So now it begins to make a little bit more sense. So is David pushing fear, or is he pushing understanding of who that negative force is?
Well, I wanted to touch on that. Fear is how we internalize it, which when I was bringing him up, I never thought about it. But as you said, the understanding, and I'm like, yes, so the onus then comes on me, the information he's giving, how I then internalize it. And I either look at it as the information or it puts me in a state of fear. That's on me. And so that is the evolution, isn't it?
It's down to you to not allow yourself to be scared.
Yeah.
Because you should be controlling what enters and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And when you get to a certain level of understanding, you don't allow yourself to be scared. You don't allow yourself to be offended. You don't allow yourself for people to get in that way.
Yeah.
You know, it's information. He's saying, and you know, everything that I've researched that he has said, I found, and I've come to the same conclusion. So he's saying, from my point of view, that is this negative force that is doing this, and this. From my point of view, I'm saying there's all of this information that negative force is keeping from us. So we are in agreement. You know, when instead of spending our time arguing, why don't we find a commonality? It's like in one of his new books, The Trap. You can turn around. That's okay. You can turn. You know, people have said to me, you know, David's new book called The Trap is saying that when you pass from this world, there is a trap and there's illusions and this kind of stuff. And I'm saying the commonality is that I agree that there's a trap, but I would disagree on the location of the trap. So instead of arguing about the location of the trap, let's agree that there's a trap, and let's try and free people from the trap. You have to, you know, you sometimes have to put these egotistical swords of armor away.
Yeah.
And just say, if the 4,200 recorded religions of this world were to actually see the commonality between them all, it would unify them instead of separating them. And it is that separation that has them fighting. And they are fighting and killing each other over whose God is the most loving.
So if God created both negative and positive,
God doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. Okay, so we've got the negative, right? Okay, so we've got the negative and the positive polarities, which are fighting amongst themselves because one can't exist without the other. Like the tree of life will say you have to have the right and the left, otherwise either one would crumble. You've got to have them both.
Right. Yes.
So how's it got to a point, and I know the answer for this, but whoever watches this video, how's it got to a point where the negative has been able to overrun and take over the minds? Is that technology? I mean, you know, we've talked about the demiurge, the Gnostic version of the negative that's controlling this realm. And also on that, I want to talk about what is the trap? Is the trap Saturn, the black cube? You know, and again, I'd love your insight on that. But how's it got to a state where the negative has? How have you got everybody so bloody?
We've allowed it.
Sorry,
we've allowed it to happen.
Allowed it. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you have to take due responsibility for what has happened.
Yeah,
you know, we have a system really when we allow ourselves to be walked over. We elect people who are there to use us as a doormat, and we don't somehow, because the majority of people are living or existing within the lower mind. they are really still in the animalistic nature in their way, in their thought process. People who are awakened, people who operate from the higher mind, will not tolerate being walked over. And that is why it is important. That is why it is important to create as many doormats as possible, because they're the ones that are saying, "Oh, do anything you want to me. I won't resist." They're the ones that they want. So why has it got to this stage? The simple answer is we've allowed it to. You know, why is what we deem to be negative, inhumane, anti-human system to rule? Because we've allowed it to.
Yeah.
You know, yes, you can turn around and say, well, we've been programmed bit by bit. Yes, we have. But I haven't been programmed. You haven't been programmed.
Exactly.
You know, a Christian lady came to me at the end of one of my talks and said, "You're arrogant, aren't you?" She said, "So we've all been brought up on a lie except for you." And I turned around and said, "No, I was brought up on the same lie, but I saw through it." And at that point, she stormed off. Because the fact of the matter is, I live in the same goldfish bowl as every other goldfish.
Yeah.
It's just I realise that there's something outside the tank, and they don't, and that's down to them.
Yeah.
Because there's enough information to begin to wonder. You know, we all do time, as the poem goes. You know, we all do time in the gutter. Dreamers learn to look at the stars. We have the means to transcend, and if you choose not to, if you choose to believe the lies, if you don't spend any time looking into the world in which you exist, if you would rather go around and get drunk and smash things up and scream "Man City, Man City," that's up to you. But you will never transcend the lower mind if you don't. So,
but you know, when that affects our like, let's put the Strawman. Actually, I didn't know you. I watched a video on the Strawman, and you appeared in that video. I was like, "Oh, Michael, I didn't actually know you'd been down that road." But let's briefly talk about the Strawman and the legalese system. If people aren't aware, there are so few of us that understand it for what it is, and this is why it feels like a big uphill battle, and how we are fighting a massive machine, because they've got the. So those that we go, okay, they're not your journey, you're not prepared to wake up. They're also, one could say, and again, it's our own internal perception, but one could say that they are bringing us down with them, because again, we're ununified. In order to fight, to beat this system, we have to be unified.
We do. It's for that very reason that there will at some point in the future there will be an earthly dimensional split, and what will happen is the people who are in that mindset, they will remain here, and the ones who can think, who can rise from it, will be in a different dimension of earth. When you look at the legal system as it is, the legal system is created to make it lawful for them to do what they like. And that is the legal system, and everything relates to maritime law, which is the law of commerce. And again, there's so many videos out there when people are explaining to you that when you go into a court and you walk into the dock, you know, it is all maritime law. You know, you enter into a relationship, a partnership, it's all got the word ship in it, because we are all vessels on the waters. Now, when I went back to the
maritime law, sorry, go on.
And when I was talking at the beginning about the word water being memory, and there's a lot of knowledge that is stored in water. So if you are retaining the knowledge of the world, then you are really occupying the major waterways. Now, what do we call the major waterways? We call them the mainstreams. So now we have the mainstream news, mainstream religion, mainstream media. They are controlling the major waterways of information, of knowledge. But they're also controlling everything in life. And if people were to spend 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes of their time looking into the SESTI QV Trust of the Vatican Church, they'll begin to have a greater understanding of as to why things are as they are. But legally, it is authorised. It's justifying their plunder. You know, people will say, "Well, I've paid off my mortgage," which means death grip, "so I own my house." No, you don't. Yes, I do. We'll go and speak to somebody who was on the HS2 line who bought their house and they were subject to a compulsory purchase order. They didn't own their house, did they? You don't own anything because at birth you are handing it over. When you buy anything, you have to register it. The word registration comes from regis, which is king. So you are handing everything that you have over to the state, including your children, because you have to register. So you don't own anything. They own you under their system. And their system allows them to do it because it is a system of law that is enforced by the courts that they set up to enforce it. So this is the world in which you live under. And if you don't do anything about it, you will always live under this system. So it is really understanding it, because when you understand it, you can use it to your advantage. For argument's sake, you borrow £6,000 off HSBC Bank, and you're paying, you sign a contract. Saturn, the god of law, contracting energy contract. So it's limiting you. So you sign this contract, and you're paying £50 a month, and then 12 months down the line, they decide to sell that debt to Barclays, and Barclays write to you and say, "You now owe us this money." You can turn around and say, "Okay, show me the contract between you and I that says that I owe Barclays Bank the money," because no such contract exists. So that nullifies the debt, in effect. And I've done this to people, for 4 people, and I've won. Even up against legal representatives, I have won, because I have said, my contract is with HSBC. My contract is not with Barclays. Show me the contract, and I will continue to pay. There is no contract.
I had a similar dealing with the student loan company, basically because I'm reaching 50. The debt can be written off, and I've always deferred it. I've never earned over. And anyway, last year they sent me a letter. You owe. They said they claimed that they'd sent me 12 letters. So I'd done the deferment process when I was supposed to do it, and I didn't hear anything, so I just forgot about it. And the first letter that I came across was a termination letter, basically saying, because you've failed to abide by, I'm obviously paraphrasing, you failed to abide by the T's and C's of our contract, we want £8,000 off you. Well, of course, I went into a panic straight away, not thinking about all the stuff that I know. I rang them, so therefore I obviously contracted with them. Anyway, long story short, I kept pushing back. I said, I want proof of these 12 letters you claim that you sent me. This is your fault because you didn't defer it when I sent all the information in. And what actually told me that I had the power is that they've given me 7 days, the lucky number 7, to pay off this debt of £8,000. In 12 days later, I got a letter from them saying that we haven't heard from you, because I basically hadn't checked my letterbox. We haven't heard from you. Please call us to arrange payment. Well, as soon as that was sent 12 days later, and the 7 days that I had to pay the £8,000, I knew straight away that they didn't have a leg to stand on. So I kept kicking back. In the end, I said, show me the contract between you and I. And then I got a letter, because they tried to fob me off to the ombudsman. And I said, no, I want you to deal with this complaint. Show me the contract. Anyway, they said, sending you £50 for the aggravation. You won't need to do anything in August. They still want me to defer it up until now, until August, which is just ridiculous. And then in August, my contract, it's written off. But basically, they wanted a little bit of money out of me because I hadn't been in touch with them. They honoured me the debt back, so I could defer, right? So I didn't then owe this £8,000, but I'd accrued interest of £1,200. Yeah, so I was like, fuck that. I know what you're playing. You want a little bit of money out of me before I hit 50 and you don't get sweet FA from me.
Of course, they always use fear. Now, the word payment or the word bill means bloodletting. So a bill means bloodletting. so basically, they want your life. They want your lifeblood from you, and that is payment, and that is a bill. In effect, if there's a £3,000 debt and they sell it to a debt collecting company, that debt collecting company buy that debt for like £10 for every 1,000. So a £3,000 debt becomes £30 to them. So now if they start getting beyond £30, they're starting to make a profit off you. In essence, you don't know anything on something that doesn't exist. I was going to a talk 6 months ago, and I just had to literally, I hadn't been to the central Birmingham for a long time, but now there's these clean air charges that popped up everywhere.
Oh, God.
And I basically just had to skim in and skim out to get through. It might have only been like one long street, but it was a clean air congestion charge, just like they have ULEZ charges in London. And I thought nothing of it because my car is zero emission. It wasn't intentional. It was just zero emission. So I thought, well, it's of no relevance to me because my car's zero emission. When they do a check on it, when they read the number plate, it will come up as being an eco, So I just carried on, and I didn't ring them as you meant to say that I've been through, and now I want to be charged for, in addition.
Why would you?
In addition to paying a Roman road usage charge, which is what road tax is, I now wish to pay you even more because it makes a real difference. The fact that I've driven through a street and now I'm paying you for it. It's really made a difference to the air, hasn't it? Because I've already done it. And anyway, a couple of weeks later, wherever it was, I had a fine come through from Birmingham City Council saying that you'd gone through this clean air charge and you hadn't paid in advance or you hadn't paid subsequently. So I sent them a letter or an email, can't remember which one it was, and said, my car, I just said my car is zero emission. Why am I being charged for breaching the clean air zone? It doesn't get cleaner than that, really, in terms of cars. And they're right back saying, no, your car is still subject to this fine. So I said no. And we went to a tribunal. And I got all my evidences together, and I got all the government statistics, and I got all the details of my car, and it was a zero emission. And then I got the government certificates that says that my car is far better than what the government is aiming for, etc., etc. And then I briefly mentioned, although I didn't, my next card was going to be the fact that the road signs are actually unlawful and they're not legally enforceable. But I didn't have to get to that stage because they dropped it. They said, we offer no evidence and scrap the fine. Yeah. What they're relying on is fear-mongering. That when it comes through and says it's £120 now, but if you pay it within 2 weeks, it's half. What they're hoping for and what they're relying upon is people get scared and say, oh, and pay it. When in reality, but they're legally, their system authorises their plunder. And exactly that is what the legal system is. It is commerce law. It is the law of business. People are not seen as flesh and blood. They are seen as a business. Yeah, and then you begin to understand the way in which courts work. Yeah. So they dropped it. What they were relying on is me being ignorant and not knowing, and accepting what they say. Accept that. The local authority has said that my car is subject to this. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Your signs are unlawful. Your methods are unlawful. Even. We don't have to go into, I'm not going to ring them because that's then a contract. What you need to do is use the system against them.
Yeah.
We don't need to build new courts. We just need to use the ones we already have to our advantage and understand how they work. If you understand how they work, they can never get one over on you. It is the ignorance of not understanding the game that they are playing that makes them the victor. I could have turned around and said, all right, well, the council who are, the authority in this case. No, they're not. But they're the authority in this case. And they've said that my car is subject to their charge. So I'll fold over, I'll become that doormat, and I'll allow them to walk over me. Or I can turn around and say, no. And if everybody turns around and says, no, it'd be a different world.
And that's the battle we're against, isn't it? It's everybody. They don't even want to know. I mean, look when COVID happened, and we were trying to, you know, getting laugh emojis and getting, you know, people. They're so just lie down and be slapped in the face. They just take it. They just take it.
The amount of people that attacked you for being so-called an anti-vaxxer. Now, you know, when they're dropping down dead, who's laughing now? You're having super fit athletes that are dropping down dead on the sports field because they've just had their injection. You know, there is a provable link, and there always was a provable link between, especially the second vaccination, and death. There's a provable link.
How did he get away with it, Michael? How did he get away with it? You know, and it is. I can see the dead entities already. We're dead to them already.
We are dead. You know, we were lost at sea. We're dead.
But just on like the vaccine thing. I mean, I never wanted my channel to be about this, but with your wealth of knowledge, damn, I hope I don't get this taken down because I said the word, because I've had one video taken down. We better be careful what we say, actually. But why do you think what from a catalyst, from a soul evolution point of view, right? Let's go back to the esoteric here, because I do believe I'm of the understanding that 2020 happened as a catalyst to wake more and more people up, because for soul evolution, because without the catalyst, without the negative forces, we just remain stagnant. That's what I've learned of late. So on that makes it a positive thing that 2020 happened. So just on the injuries that these things are creating, and of course the death that they are creating, from an esoteric soul point of view, what is your opinion of that theme? Because of course, as humans, we're like, it's sinister, it's evil, it's blah blah. But what is it from a soul perspective?
Well, from a soul perspective, as you said, you know, there are certain things that happen. There are certain crossroads that we come to that enable us to make a decision, to make a choice, and depending upon where you are at that particular moment, really dictates what choice you will make. Because I was in a different place to a lot of people, I chose not to. You know, I chose to see it for what it was, because I'd taken the time and made the effort to learn about it, to understand it, to realize that when you actually attach the logic to the things that we are being told, it doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, there's a reason for it not making sense. You know, so I spent the time informing myself about what was going on, and it was that time invested in myself that enabled me to make the decision that I wanted nothing to do with it. Everything in this world is really anti-human. From food, from water, from the atmosphere that we breathe, it's all anti-human. It is trying to make us sick. It is trying to keep us in a certain vibration so that we never transcend beyond that vibration. But from a soul perspective, it is a school of hard knocks in which we can learn a lot. You know, but it takes persistence and it takes effort in order to learn, and in order to say, well, I'm now going to use this to my advantage. You know, I understand how it works. I understand the system. I understand the reasons behind it, and I'm going to use that to greatly develop myself.
So that then brings me to going back to The Trap. I've not read David's book of The Trap. Incidentally, David was the first person I went to when all this kicked off. I'm like, David must know what's going on. He's the first. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in. So I've concluded that this realm is a school, and the trap is the body, and we don't get out of the trap of the body until we learn from the lessons of the school. So obviously, Dave David believes that this realm is the trap, not a school. He believes it's a trap, doesn't he? What? So, what is your perspective, and where is the trap? Is that Saturn?
No, I have to say that I've because of what I said previously, I don't necessarily read other people's books. My only knowledge of the trap is emails of complaint from other people who have read it.
Oh,
Now,
really?
it seems to be, if I understand it correctly, again, indirectly, that he was saying that when you physically die and your soul or your essence leaves the body, and it is met by, Granny Edith or Granny Smith or whatever, that Granny Smith is a demon pretending to be Granny Smith. And it is that demon that takes you to a certain place that forces you to come back, almost. Because you've been trapped, you've been deceived into this eternal hamster wheel. Now, my opinion, and again, I kind of have evidence for this opinion, but the world in which it is run is where the trap is. Because the very nature of people not spiritually developing inevitably means that the soul will have to come back here, because it is not learned, it is not fulfilled the plan. So in terms of, is it a demon, given some kind of deception that it's your granny who's taking you to this wonderful place? No. Do I agree that there are those kind of entities on planet Earth in the third dimension that are manipulating humanity to make sure that they have to come back? Yes. And that's my opinion of what the trap is. So again, we could debate. There's no point debating, because we both agree that there's a trap. We may just slightly differ on the location of it. So
I think the whole granny sending us back, and I think that's coming from a Christian perspective, the fear. And I know fear is understanding, but people don't know that fear.
Well, the religious answer to everything. I've spoken to Jehovah's Witnesses, I've spoken to Muslims, I've spoken to Christians, I've spoken to people of many religions, and I say to them, what do you believe about the afterlife? And they all say it's Satan. It's there is no afterlife. It is Satan tricking you into believing that there's an afterlife. Satan is tricking you that it is your Auntie Edith. So their answer to everything is it's either God or it's Satan.
Yeah.
But it's not. Because what you have to realize is, just use a simple analogy. Your soul is a letter. Now that letter during its existence may be put into many, many envelopes and posted to many, many different places. But the letter is always the same essence, even though the envelope is different. And so when you are born, when you were born, when I was born, both of us are 50% of our mother and 50% of our father. So our parents have reincarnated through us.
Mm.
So reincarnation exists in the physical world as well, without dying.
Of course,
because their genetics, their bloodline, the information that is stored in that genetic heritage, has been reincarnated in you. So even not looking at the physical death, you still have reincarnation. So when your soul leaves, if it's achieved what it needs to achieve, it will move on to achieve something elsewhere. If it doesn't, it may make the decision that, look, I haven't done what I needed to do. I haven't learned. I haven't grown in the way in which I wanted to. So I shall give her another try. And that's not a trap. That is a soul development necessity, really. But there are things here that are manipulated to make sure that the soul has to make that choice.
Yeah, and I think we all know what those manipulations are. So again, just quickly, because we're touching on 2 hours, as the last one was touching on 2 hours, and we've stayed quite on subject. We haven't gone all over the place with this one, but I think we covered an awful lot in the last one. It's been absolutely amazing and really informative. And you solidified a lot of my own internal knowing about the path that I'm on, and the things that are holding me back from pursuing further the, you know, the actions, if you like, with what's considered to be that path. But just on the manipulations that happen in this realm to ensure that souls do keep coming back. And again, I always touch on this. I touched on it the last time, and you did give me your perception on it. But the Neuralink, the AI, the transhumanism, my perception is that is trapping us further into matter. But you said something along the lines of the universe. If humanity isn't evolving at the rate that it should, then that's what you think AI is about, if I'm understanding that correctly.
But basically, if you imagine, again, I've mentioned the universal mind, the mental singularity, and how it had to create in order to understand itself. Now, the universe is always striving for equilibrium, and even mainstream science would allude to that. So the universe is always trying to reach its maximum, its best, its full potential. Now, that really is should be the intention of us all. You know, things want to live, things want to evolve, things want to get better, things want to know more than it did previously. So the natural tendency is to evolve and expand. If you have, you know, for argument's sake, you are a child, like they do in some countries around the world, and they will wrap up the child's feet really, really tightly and bound it, so that child's foot will never grow and become disabled, because then they can put that child on the street and beg for money. So if you imagine that humanity is that thing that is tightly bound around the foot of the universe, and it is stopping the universe from growing, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to allow it to stop you from growing? In the same way, are we going to allow people who are ignorant to stop us from spiritually evolving, or is something going to happen to reverse that? So the universe will reverse that, because humanity is stopping that evolution by the way in which we act, the way in which we do things. So there is something called the law of evolution, which states that lower life forms will be replaced by higher life forms, because that has to happen in order for the universe to fully expand. In the same way,
lower life forms will be replaced by higher life forms. Right.
Yes, because we have to expand it in the same way that we should be expanding to our God state, which is our maximum state, but we're being prevented from doing that. In the same way, the universe is being prevented by doing that by us. So higher life forms will eventually replace the lower ones. The lower life forms, I will tell you, will die out. The lower life forms, those who are operating from the animalistic lower mind, they will die out. And how they will die out is when I speak about this dimensional split on Earth. The ones who are operating from the lower mind will remain, but they will lose the power of procreation. So eventually they're going to die out.
Yeah.
And the ones where the ones who are operating from the higher mind, that are consistent with the evolution of the process of the universe, will be living in a higher dimension of Earth, and they will be evolving. So the thinkers will rise, as it was put to me, and they will be operating in a different dimension. And the ones who are holding everything back will eventually die out, and
because
they will be replaced by platforms. Yes.
And so it's not like, again, what's been sold to us. I mean, I have a comment on one of my posts on Facebook about what will happen to those of us that are aware, and we're all going to be herded up. And I'm like, that's just fear programming. Do you know what I mean? That's just to get everybody fearing that we can't speak, to basically put us in that the lower mind. Because I'm like you. I think this whole from 2020 at the very least has been an intelligence test.
Yes.
You know,
I reversed it on its head at the very beginning when many of the truth movements were saying, look, they're trying to find out who are the strong ones amongst us to bring us down. No, actually, it is the strong ones that they're interested in, not the weak ones.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at all of these, you know, superior race, you know, the Nazi Germany superior race, it wasn't the strong people that wanted to destroy, it was the weak they wanted to destroy. So
Yeah.
I turned it on its head and said, actually, no, it's actually ciphering out the strong, because they're the ones who are the free thinkers, the ones who are saying no, the ones who are going around the supermarkets with no mask, you know, the ones who are saying, I don't believe the bull. They're the higher mind people. They're the ones who will be in a different dimension, a different vibration. And the ones who are operating from the lower mind will be the ones here who will eventually die out. So that may take, you know, a couple of generations or whatever, but eventually they'll be dead.
So if this realm is governed by negative entities that are not of this earth, well, why do they want the higher minds to? Why did want the higher minded if they're of a negative? I mean, I understand it from that Universal Mastery Guy's podcast. He believes he's got the bloodlines connected to the reptilians, who are controlling this realm as it stands at the moment. And again, you know, it's conjecture, isn't it? None of us. Well, he claims that he knows, but anyway. But they're doing it for the good of humanity, and they're doing it for the good of the earth, because we need the negative. And if in fact, if we are going into the feminine is the negative polarity. So
again, everything has a plan, and you can't have so-called good without so-called bad. But in order for the good to grow, the bad exists.
Yeah.
And in the same way, you know, you have these negative forces that have a plan, and that plan is resistance, and it is that resistance that enables us to grow. But even in what you would deem the higher levels, there is still negativity, but it has less effect. So you still have to have the existence of the comparable opposites, but it is the level of which you allow it to influence you makes the difference. It's the same now, you know, I live in the same third dimensional world as everybody else. I face the same challenges as everybody else. But when you're operating from the higher mind, those challenges you see as a benefit to you, because you are using them in which for personal growth. So the so-called negative or the so-called badness has less influence on you, and that means that you're operating in the higher places, because in the higher places negativity has no influence, but it still has to exist in order for the positive to exist. So you just have to get yourself into a mental and physical and emotional state where these things don't have that influence on you anymore. If they do have an influence on you, then it is really appealing to your lower mind, which is what religion does. And it's very much the carrot and the stick. You know, it's the fear and the reward. They're trying to keep people in the lower mind, because if you keep people in the lower mind, you keep them here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you keep them here, then you are in control of them, because you control here.
Yeah. So going back to the alien agenda, the reptilians versus, I don't know what they're called, the ones that look most human.
That's Palladians, but there's quite a few that look humanish. But the Palladians look...
The Nordics. It's this battle between good and evil. I mean, again, we're going into realms that we don't need to go into, but I just want to touch on it. You know, so the reptilians exist.
Yes, there is battles between so-called good and evil, until eventually they all begin to realize that good and evil should be unified and not at war. And the moment that you realize, you know, your heart and mind, your positive, your negative, your yin and your yang, are actually two different vibrations of the same scale. You should be unifying them instead of allowing them to be at war. So the moment these beings from wherever they are, from wherever they exist, the moment they realise that, in the same way that my spiritual coaching is telling people that they need to do it themselves, in the same way that my books are telling people that they don't need to read books, in the same way when they begin to realise that good and evil is the same thing, they shouldn't be at war. There should be that compatibility, that oneness.
And do you think it'll get to that? Because there's always a strife for power, isn't there? I mean, if the reptilians are controlling, let's say, I don't know, the elites as an example, and there is this battle for controlling humanity. I mean, for one, that should show people how powerful humans actually are. The fact that they feel the need to manipulate and coerce and brainwash to the extent that they do in order to suppress our powers. But then again, flip that, and this is where the duality comes in. Flip that, so our soul chose for that to happen. Oh my! This is where I start to get like.
It gets even more interesting when everyone realizes that this is just a dream.
Yeah.
It is the universal mind that is having a dream. And it is a nesting dream where you have a dream within a dream within a dream. Some of the dream state is a sensory perception. In other parts of the dream state, it is non-sensory. Now we're talking about the physical world and the afterlife, but it's all contained within the dream of the mental singularity of the universal mind. When you look at, in our brain, the micro, what creates dreams? It is the hippocampal. And what is the hippocampal? It is the black hole of the mind. So what are the black holes of the universe? The hippocampal of the mind of the universe, which facilitates the dream. So wait till people find out that all this is just a dream. It's not real. And then that's when the fun will begin.
And do you think a lot of these agendas are to stop the realization of people figuring out that it's just a dream? Because do you think that would actually, people aren't ready for that kind of information? It's like, let's talk about, I don't know, the apocalypse. And I know we've discussed, and you've got your opinion on the apocalypse, and I'm sure it's more accurate than the opinions of these YouTubers. But let's talk about the chemtrails as an example. You know, everybody's saying, oh, the poisoning us. I think the chemtrails are something bigger. I think they're hiding maybe the white sun, maybe they're hiding the Nibiru. What's your opinion on that? I always think if it's out in the public domain, there's something bigger going on, because humanity isn't ready for this information.
No, they're not. Nibiru is the circle of heaven. It's not a planet. So that's Nibiru. When you look at the YouTube warriors again, I don't, because no benefit will come from it.
I tell you something. This is actually, because I'm getting less and less watching YouTube videos, and you've put me right on the left-hand path, and I don't need to do any of that. I'm going to start writing my book instead of watching YouTube videos. But go on.
Put yourself to to good use and do the things that you love. You an example. You can never understand timelessness from a position of time. Time is simply change. That is why we age. That is why we think time is speeding up, because the more that we change as individuals, the more that time appears to get faster or whatever. So time is really change. So you can never understand what is not time from a place of time. In the same way, it's difficult to understand limitless from a place of limitation. Now, when I said at the beginning that the mental singularity lives in a constant state of unconsciousness. Now, consciousness comes from unconsciousness. So it lives in a dreamless state of blackness, nothingness, the dreamless state. In order to experience multiple things, it created consciousness. So some of the greatest scholars and philosophers in the world have never been able to define what consciousness is. So I will define it now. Consciousness is the unconscious thinking of things. That is what consciousness is. Nobody else has ever been able to define it. but that's what consciousness is. So you take the dreamless state of the universal mind, and it now has to come into consciousness in order to dream. That dream is reality.
But it's not
Your
real because
it's not real. But the word real, you know, it's said in mystic circles that it doesn't have to be real to be true. Now, what they mean by that is the word real relates to the five senses. We consider it real if the five senses can decipher it, can pick it up. So just because it's real, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be real to be true. So in other words, it doesn't have to be a five sense thing to be true. So we have the sensory dream and the non-sensory dream. We have the nesting dreams. We have this dream within a dream within a dream within a dream. But when you realize that it is a dream, then you begin to control the dream. And dreams do come true. So that will add something else to the mix when people realize that all of this worry, all of this concern, all of these little bits of bickering, it's not real anyway. You are an aspect of the universal giant brain. In effect, we are neurons inside the universal mind.
And that's where the macrocosm and the microcosm gets absolutely massive to contemplate,
Yes.
because our universe is a microcosm of another bloody universe, and so it goes on. It's like it's like infinity, isn't it?
It is, and we don't have an accurate symbol for infinity. So the closest that we could find was the circle. So a lot of these symbols that we see, even within secret societies, it is the closest to what you can get to. So the circle was decided that this is the closest that we can get to trying to describe what infinity is. But it's not completely accurate, because it's, again, in the same way that you can't understand timelessness from time, you can't understand limitness from limitation. It's difficult to understand infinity from a place of being finite.
Yes.
So,
and it's interesting, you know, when you're bringing up all these words like the no thing and limitless, it's taking me to films, and I'm thinking I'm going to go back and watch these things, because these
yes.
they're all depicted in the movies and the TV shows, like Stranger Things with the no thing, and
there's reasons, because they're telling you, you know, that they're giving you information. It's for you to reach that level to understand it.
Which makes one wonder that the negative forces are actually not being negative at all. They're actually trying to show people, hey, look, we're showing you here in plain sight. Yes. This is what this. So again, it's not negative, is it? Because it's about soul evolution.
It's not negative. If you words can only take you so far, because words are limitation. So if you want to describe something that is limitless, you have to use something other than words. Now that is often symbols, hieroglyphs, Nazca lines, whatever you want to use that takes you beyond words, because they have their limitations. Now, why do these things become secret? Because there's no words to describe them. You know, you have all of these symbols, these church secrets, this sacred geometry that is really expressing things that have been seen in the unseen worlds.
Yes.
And they're bringing them back, and they're trying to recreate what they've seen. You know, when you look at
who's seen those things then?
Who's
seen those things in the unseen world?
Seers, the mystics, the seers and the mystics who interact with the unseen world in the same way that we interact with this world. So, you know, when you look at the likes of Ezekiel in the Bible, and he sees the vision of the wheel and the vision of the chariot, you know, that the chariot is your body. But he's bringing back from the unseen worlds what he has seen, and he's trying to, the best he can, recreate it, you know, which is very, very difficult if you don't have the words to describe what it is.
Absolutely.
You have to, you know, so you have to come up with some kind of artwork or some kind of creation that says, well, this is what I've seen, you know, I bring it back. When you, for argument's sake, when you read aspects of the Bible, you know, the mystics read it in meditation. because that's how it goes in. It's not a book. You know, the Bible is not a book. So a lot of the things that have been recreated for us in the likes of, you know, famous paintings and famous works are visions or things that they've seen in other worlds, and they've come back and tried to describe them to us. But there's no words in which to describe them. So, you know, you may see it as secret and clandestine and keeping it away from people. But how can it be secret when it's right in front of us?
Yeah. Because one could
You know,
say I had that experience of the unseen world when I did my mushroom ceremony. I don't know what your view is on psychedelics, but I experienced it. So I understand what you're saying, and I can't describe what I saw to its fullest.
no, of course you can't, because you don't have words to describe what you've seen. That, you know, words don't exist. So again, you can't describe or understand the limitless from a place of limitation. You can't have limited words describing sufficiently something from the limitless worlds.
And I did a video not long back on the weaponization of language and why I believe words have actually been introduced into our reality, and it's to hinder us from actually seeing, because if and telepathy and things, you know, the things like that, because language is easier to do. Well, we've been untrained, haven't we? But to use language, and we know that they've used language against us, like with words that we speak, we know that it has an energetic resonance, and the energetic resonance is often used to serve their agendas. But if we were to use hieroglyphics, and it's the dumbing down, isn't it, Michael? That's
partly. I mean, when you look at the vibrations of ancient languages and ancient people, when they used to say a prayer or they used to do a chant, there was such a powerful vibration of their voice that it created magic, really. Now, what you have with the interpretation into various languages is that it loses its vibrational tone. So when you have the likes of the Bible that's translated into English, it has lost its tone from Hebrew, which has lost its tone from Egyptian, and so on and so on and so on. So the words and the language that we are speaking now is like putting processed food into the body. There's zero vibration. So you're not recreating the magic that we once did through our voice. So originally, you know, a prayer was to take someone to a particular place, to elevate them to a particular place, or elevate the congregation with chants and with hymns and with songs inside a spiritual building of amplification of sound. But we've just lost that, and some of it is deliberate, and some of it is just through the process of interpreting things from other language and losing it in the process. So when you speak with an original language, you know, when you speak with original tone, I've been present when we've done that at the likes of Stonehenge, and if you imagine, the circle of stones were vibrating. And that is what they used to do with the original tone of voice. So we have lost it's almost like we've lost the ingredients of this wonderful chocolate gâteau. You know, the ingredient has come down the generations, and now we have a little brownie, whereas they used to have this beautiful chocolate cake. We have the original meanings have been lost through translation. The original meanings have been lost through a change of tone of our voice.
But do you not think that we are still creating magic in the sense, and I mean, this is again another reason why I stepped away from the truther community, because I felt that whatever they were putting out, we were actually manifesting. As an example, you alone, nothing will be happy. By sharing that kind of information, we're actually manifesting their own dirty work for them. So
yes.
So we are continually performing magic, but it's magic that we're actually using against us. Would you agree with that?
Well, in the beginning was the word. Now, what is the word? Well, in mystical circles, it is the potency of sound. So when we spell words, or we speak words that are spelt, then we are speaking magic. We are creating magic. Now, that can be black magic, it can be white magic, it can be whatever, but we are speaking with a potency of sound. And the things that we say, the things that we do, the way in which we act, the things that we pass on to others is really a hypnotic magic spell.
Yeah.
So, you know, the word becomes flesh. You know, in other words, what we think, what we do will eventually become manifest into reality.
Yeah. That's what abracadabra is. I can't remember the phrase. Abracadabra.
It means something like I create as I speak, or I create what I
That's
speak.
right.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Which is true, because you are speaking spells.
Yes, and that's what it's called, spelling.
It is. That's why it's called spelling.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Saturn a few times during the show, but Saturn, again in mystical terms, is learning by listening. That's why you wear earrings.
Yeah.
The rings of Saturn on your ears. So it's not a negative thing. It's the original sun, you know, according to many ancient documentation. So Saturn is learning by listening, and the sun is learning by sight.
I actually, again, theorized Saturn. Obviously, Saturn depicting lead. Superman can't see through lead. So if again from a Gnostic
X-rays.
perspective, and sorry,
X-rays. We have lead. You wear lead apron when you go for X-rays, don't you? Because the X-ray vision, you can't go through lead. It is really the lead is your dense nature, and you are trying to transmute that denseness, and that is why we have many references to mountains, because the higher you get up a mountain, the less dense it is. So the summit of a mountain is less dense than the 3D world. So it's closer to God, it's closer to the higher realms. So Saturn, in terms of lead, is really the density of the human condition. Whereas you then move towards the light, you move towards the gold, which is the less dense. It is the illumination of the body, where you sacrifice.
That's what the alchemists refer to when they say lead to gold. It's not physically turning lead to gold. It's to do with.
Although they did find ways to do that, but it's actually a metaphor for the transmutation of you, for the transmutation of their vessel from the low density, which they equated to lead, to a more lighter, less dense condition. So from condition to potential. So it's a transmutation of themselves is what they're referring to.
Well, Michael, I'm going to let you go. It's been absolutely amazing. I want to talk about the Anunnakis. I want to talk more about Nibiru. I want to talk about more about the aliens, but we could do that on another chat if you wanted to come on again.
Absolutely. Well, what I'll say then, just to tempt you, the Anunnaki are the pharaohs of Egypt, and Nibiru is the circle of heaven, which was written in Sumerian as 3,600. 3,600 in Sumerian language means big circle. Now that is the orbit of Nibiru, 3,600 years. It is the circle of heaven that is marked on the Giza Plateau, and the Anunnaki are the pharaohs of Egypt. But next time we'll go into more detail.
Oh, but now you've got me like chomping at the bit, but we're going to leave it there because that's hanging around now. So it's feed time, and I need to go to my horses. And absolutely, it's been absolutely amazing. I don't know where else to go from here regarding my research, because I'm now like, you know, what do I do regards to, because my channel was kind of like, that's why I changed the name to Cosmic Enigma, because I was going down the left-hand path and blah blah and that, and of course my own internal I was being led down another path here. So I'm like, what we're going to do videos on now? So it's just going to be me and the Michael show, I'm afraid. So
what you need to do is sit in the silence, which is the presence of awareness, and listen to what comes through, rather than try and search. Listen to what comes through. In all of the dozens upon dozens of personal experiences of the otherworldly climb that I've experienced, on 100% of those occasions they've happened when I've not been looking for them.
So, and it is true, like I say, you know, like Anubis, who looked like Snoopy, came to a meditation, and that's because I allowed myself to go deep into the meditation. But I do have the attention span of a gnat, and when I'm meditating, quite often I don't always get to that place because look, we know meditation's a hard thing to do if you're not well practiced at it.
Yeah, but don't forget, when you're having these visions, it's, as I was saying, you know, the seers and the mystics, when they go to other worlds and they see things and they bring back that information. Now, what you saw became what the Egyptians drew as Anubis.
Yeah.
You're seeing the same thing in that they saw, but they're coming back and they're creating it as, you know, as a personification. But Anubis is really the twice born, which is a spiritual resurrection. And that's what it means.
Which is beautiful. So just quickly, as regards to, because going back to the magic, and because I have to, because and the dangers are around doing things that you don't know what you're doing with. But my curiosity of why I want to do it is because of these visions, the experiences that I've had. Where would you say, in order for me to, you know, if I did want to pursue, because I do have this feeling that I want to connect with the other worlds, but again, I am very, very acutely aware of the dangers of that, and that's why I said, I reiterate, I've not done it yet. What would your advice be?
My advice would be, you've already visited the other worlds, because you've seen things, you've experienced things, and they've come to you and you've been to them. So that, you know, you've done that without the magic. In terms of when you say, you know, magic mushroom and ayahuasca and all this kind of, it's a very, very temporary way to enter these worlds, but it's an artificial way in which to enter these worlds. You know, you can, when you get to a certain stage of development, and you'll be able to do these things without any artificial things, but you'll do that when you're ready. So my advice would be, really, you've already experienced the magic, because it's come to you and you've been to it. You've already experienced these things. So that is magic in itself. What you are trying to do is artificially recreate what you already have.
That's true, but I'm also trying to understand the messages as well. You know, you know, the messages of that. What I guess my since 2020, my question's always been the why. You know, why did I see Anubis? Why have I had spiders come to me in the past? Why this? Why that? Why the air freshener? Why the demon? Do you know what I mean? The why. And I guess it's always the why, instead of just accepting that the unknown.
But let's analyze, what is a why. It is a thought. It is thinking. In the same way that the unconscious universal brain, the universal mind, had to create consciousness in order to think. The reason that we think is to expand consciousness. So asking questions is a necessity for a spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
The same way that it was a necessity for the universal mind in the unconscious dreamless state to experience things. So you have to think in order to evolve spiritually. Yeah. It was now different for the universal mind. It is now different for your mind. So these thoughts, these questions, have a compatible vibrational answer. And if you are going into these states where you are being visited by things that the Egyptians saw thousands of years ago, that to me is magic. I don't need anything artificial to recreate what is natural.
That's beautiful, and it's taken a lot of pressure off me. I'm actually feeling a weight off, like I can go out and enjoy my horses, and I can go out and, you know, because I don't have to sit for 4 hours and do a ritual to try and experience what I experience in seconds.
You don't. We're often standing in our own way. You know, if we step aside and let ourselves develop, we'll have these things naturally. You know, we are human beings, but that is the condition. The potential is human becoming.
Yes.
So beings is what we are.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to sit down and do a 4-hour ritual unless you want to. You don't have to do it to get things that are naturally around you. You just have to tune into what is naturally around you.
Yeah.
And people use different methods in which to do that. Breathing, meditation, sitting on a mountain, walking through the forest. Whichever way suits you to make that connection. That is the natural magic. That is natural magic. You don't need to sit down and do 4 or 5 hours or something. You know, you are fighting against an invisible wall. You don't have to. The moment you start fighting, the moment you start feeling the frustration, that is dropping you straight down to the lower mind again.
And you are right, it's a frustration. And I guess there is an element of me of, like, again, I use this Universal Master YouTube channel because he's the one that I've kind of honed in on, which I am resonating. I'm like, well, why aren't I there? You know, he's 28, I'm 49. Why aren't I there? Why is he doing all these rituals in his manner? Do you know what I mean? And then this pressure of the external. Again, one could say that's either Ahriman or Satan. And again, we haven't discussed that. We can talk about that next time. But it is the lower mind, isn't it? The competition of something that I've already got naturally.
Whatever name you wish to give it, it doesn't matter what name you give to it. The explanation is it's referring to you. Now, it may be his plan that he needs to do that. It may not be your plan. You have a different plan to him. You have become a spark from the original flame. Now, as a spark, you have an individual identity, you have an individual plan, you have an individual consciousness. And as such, do not concern yourself with what the other sparks are doing.
Yeah.
Concentrate on illuminating your own spark. What somebody else is doing is their plan, not yours.
Yeah. And it's true, because we're always like, you know, where am I going? What am I doing? Instead of just allowing that to evolve. I mean, I do think in my personal, there's been a case of, I think I've been guided here with whatever has been coming to me in visitations and physical manifestations of things moving and what have you.
But it can only fit into the condition that you've created. And if you've created a condition in which that can come into, then that's because you've elevated yourself to that condition. So there is no comparable to you in the same way as there's no comparable to the universal mind. There's no comparable to me. We are all here with a certain thing to do. And we are not here to compare ourselves to somebody else who has a different plan. It's like a goalkeeper saying, you know, I want to score 25 goals a year like the striker does. You have a different part. Of the game. You have it, you know, you are to stop the goals, not to score them. So you can't. Einstein says, you know, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then you're going to see all fish as being stupid. We are not here to be compared to anybody else. We are here to fulfill what we need as that individual identity. So regardless of what some 18-year-old does, that's their plan. That's not yours. You don't have to replicate something that you are not in sync with, because if you are not in sync with it, it is of no use to you. Follow your own plan, follow your own guidance, listen to your own silence, because in that silence is the loudest voice.
So, and I am going to let you go in a minute, but so as we're going back to the astrology, I had quite an in-depth astrology reading, and it was all around the occult and the dark and blah, blah, which of course is the path that I've been on. So going back to what you said earlier about astrology controlling you, or you controlling astrology, and I think we discussed this in our last conversation, where you've got the ones who are on the wave of determinism, and those who are on their own path, basically. So one could say, I'm actually following the path of my astrology, which is my blueprint, same as you. I mean, have you ever had an astrology reading, and are you on the path that you are?
No, because I changed it. I changed
it.
Okay. And that is what, you know, when I speak of things, it's because I have direct experience with what I'm saying. So when I say that the zodiac can either control you or you can control the zodiac, I had a natal chart reading, and all of my stars were in the way for where I needed to go. So I moved them and I changed it.
Interesting.
And now, so you control the zodiac, you don't allow it to control you, because if you're allowed to control you, then you are subject to its will.
And that's what Francis Bacon was saying.
And that's not the path that I wanted to take, so I changed it.
Not Francis Bacon or Francis Barrett, but So
you don't have to settle for what you have. because if you settle for what you have, then you're always going to get what you've always got.
Yeah. So was your astrology reading, your natal chart reading around you being in the police and?
It basically, it was around all of the stars bar one of my natal chart in their position and in their influence were keeping me behind the curtain instead of in front of the curtain. But the path that I was on, in the path of revelation, in the path of revealing secret things, meant that I had to be in front of the curtain and not behind the scenes. But all of my natal charts, stars, were trying to keep me behind the curtain. Now, knowing the path that I was on and where I needed to be, it was a case of moving them to the side and allowing the star to come through that was going to take me in front of the curtain. And at the moment that happened, because I made it happen, that's when I started moving forward on the path that I was destined to walk in. So the zodiac is not there to control you unless you let it. You are there to control it.
But it's interesting because I actually feel like my zodiac is actually more the occult. I believe that that's where the hidden knowledge is the occult. So my zodiac is actually saying that I'm on the path of finding out the deepest, darkest secrets about what this realm is. So whereas you had all these stars in your way, from my reading, it's an open.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's there for the taking for me, and I'm following that path.
Well, star reading, the celestial narrative, is the original science. It is where we get the original prophecy, because you read the stars, and you know that at certain times of the year, when a star is in a certain place, it has a certain influence, and as such, you can predict the future. So the original science is the stars, and we use the stars in many everyday words of the language that we don't realise. If I was to say to you, consider this, the word consider means knowledge of the stars. If I was to say disaster, it's bad star. If I was to say you have a young child, it's a youngster, that's a young star. If I watch a Hollywood movie, I'm watching an A-lister, an A-list star. All of these things are in the language of the world, and it is the original science. And if you can read the stars, you can prophesize the future.
It's amazing. It's amazing, and we're going to keep this for the next conversation. I started to follow, but I found him a little bit arrogant, and when I actually confronted him on what he thought he knew, he blocked me. But the Albion spine running through the UK. I need to write this down, what I want to talk about next time. But do you have any knowledge on the Albion spine and the astrological? So this guy is basically saying, like astrology, that the UK is the image of the stars.
The UK is the original Holy Lands. And
right, we're going to leave it. Go on.
Okay.
Quickly, I'll let you.
Now, just to conclude, really, the Albion is also a coded word for divine man. But we'll go into it more soon.
Definitely, I'm gonna make notes. The Nibiru, let me write it down while you're still on, because I've got a memory like a sieve.
Yeah, the Anunnaki are the pharaohs of Egypt, and Nibiru is the circle of the sky, which is mapped out on the Giza plateau.
Anunnaki, Nibiru, Albion spine, and I'm sure that'll lead on to other conversation. Again, Michael, it's been absolutely fabulous, and again, it's just been a fantastic discussion, and thank you so much. And I will try and get to one of your talks if it's in the local area. You put them on your Facebook, don't you? Your talks.
Yes. Well, you're kind of Manchester way, aren't you?
Cumbria.
Okay. Let me just make a note of that. If I'm anywhere near that kind of area, I'll let you know.
Definite. And when your book comes out, I'm definitely going to buy it, even though I don't need to be reading books. But hey, listen, we're human beings. We need that stimulation, and again, that's been programmed into us. To be constantly
we need what we need for now.
Yeah. I like that. We need what
you know,
we need.
a baby needs milk until it's ready for solids.
Yeah.
And that is why new initiates are called children, because they're fed on milk until they're ready for the greater knowledge, which is solids. So we are where we are, and none of us have it sussed. The more you know, it just reflects the fact that you know nothing.
Exactly.
So it just knows how very little you do know. But I'm trying. I'm seriously trying.
And the more that you know, the more questions that come up.
It does, but I'm just trying to limit the gap between what I know and what I don't know, and there's a massive gulf between the two. So if knowledge serves any purpose, it's to make you know that you have no knowledge at all. But
exactly.
You know that really
and
is.
This is why there are so many YouTube channels out there. That's why there's so many YouTube channels.
Yeah, I don't watch them because they have no value. They have no value to me. So if there's anything that does have value, then I'll watch it. But in terms of people popping up here, there, and everywhere, and telling me things that I know to be incorrect, then that only steers me away from where I'm going. It's of no value. So I tend not to do that, and I tend not to do the things that I'm not compatible with.
I think I asked you this in the last conversation about the knowledge that you do have about ancient Egypt, because that's where it all started, isn't it? This knowledge, and it led to the Bible and the Kabbalah and blah blah blah. It all stems from ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Have you been initiated into a secret society, and you don't have to? I'm going to ask the question anyway.
No, I always answer everything honestly. In previous lifetimes, yes. This lifetime is a continuation of those lifetimes. So where I left off is where I begin. So I have been initiated in previous times. My life I am finding now is an initiation, although it's not an official initiation. My life is an initiation. Am I a member of a secret society? No. Have I been invited to be a member of secret society? Many times.
Yeah.
So the truthful answer is no, because as I've said, I belong to nothing. And if I don't belong to anything, then I'm not controlled by anything, and I can say what I like. But so yes, on previous incarnations, I have been an initiate. I've been a high priest who has done initiations, and the things that I now know are in my blood. I'm a direct descendant of Queen Scotia of Pharaonic Egypt, and I have all of these bloodline connections to that place. So yes, I was once an initiate, but I'm not a member of a secret society, although I have knowledge of the secret societies.
Yeah. I actually considered, I went to a few meetings with the Freemasons, and I decided it wasn't for me because the knowledge that I actually want, I don't think I'll find in the lower levels of the Freemasonic lodges that we would be allowed in. That's what I feel. And I could be wrong, but that was...
No, you are right. There's so many members of secret societies who actually contact me privately, and they're asking me for the answers.
Yeah.
Now, you would expect that if they are members of secret societies, they would be given the answers, but they're not.
Absolutely.
Because they're only allowed to know what they need to know for their level of degree.
Yeah.
So you can take it can take a lifetime to get to the levels where you're finding out things of use. You have access to books that people outside of those organizations would not have access to, but the interpretation that is given to the lower ranks is not a truthful interpretation. It was once said that it is not for them to understand, it is for them to believe that they understand.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference. So you're not going to find these answers from going to controlled institutions.
And that's exactly what I figured. But I explored it. Like, I explore things. You've got to explore these things to realize that you're not going to get the answers that you want.
No. That's your comparable polarity. You have to sometimes do it to realize that's not the way it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to leave this for the next. I'm going to look at the. I have to go. I don't know about you, but I've got to get things done. But I'm going to ask this on the next one about how you know about your past life. Don't answer.
Okay. Don't answer. I won't answer. I won't answer about time. I won't answer about time slips. Oh, sorry.
I just think it's absolutely amazing. And I also, on the next one as well, we might talk about more about David Icke and why he knows the knowledge that he knows, if you're allowed to talk about that.
I will, if I know the answer, I will always answer, honestly.
Fabulous. Again, Michael, thank you so much. 2 hours and 44 minutes has been amazing. And I love having you on. And all this Egyptian stuff. And again, we can go more. I've got to let you go, and I've got to go. Thank you, Michael. Amazing. This is going to take about 5 hours to load up on my shitty internet. Yeah, we'll leave it a few weeks and then we'll catch up again. Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, you get it, but thank you. It's a pleasure and nice to speak to you, and go and tend to your horses.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.